Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar. If anybody can't hear me, just jot it down in the question section. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me this evening. So tonight we are doing A Happy Heart is a Healthy Heart. And this is brought to you by Cecilia Health Webinar. On the bottom of this screen, you can see there is a phone number. If you're having any technical difficulties, you can call that number. It's right at the bottom, 800-263-6317. So tonight's program is an interactive program. Our format includes a short presentation followed by interactive discussion. So to type in a question, use the question section on the webinar tool. And at the end, you'll have a chance to ask those questions and I will go over them. And we look forward to having an interactive webinar this evening. Okay, there is a disclaimer. We know that the information you're about to hear may motivate you to make lifestyle changes. Please consult your physician before making any changes to your current routine. The Cecilia Health Certified Diabetes Educators will provide strategies to help you manage your diabetes. This online Q&A session is intended to give general advice. This information is not a substitute for personal medical advice and involves the professional opinion of the Cecilia Health Certified Diabetes Educator. So tonight I will be leading your webinar. My name's Teresa Grasso. I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and a certified diabetes care and education specialist. I've been working with Cecilia Health for a few years now. I've been a dietitian for over 20 years, and I hope you enjoy the webinar this evening. Our agenda for this evening, our discussion will include what is cardiovascular disease, or referred to as CVD. What are some of the CVD risk factors? Why are people with diabetes at an increased risk? Steps to take to prevent CVD. I'll also give you some resources, and that, as I mentioned, we will have a question, answer, and sharing section at the end of the discussion. And just remember, please talk to your healthcare provider before making any changes to your diabetes treatment plan. Okay, so what is cardiovascular disease? So as I mentioned, CVD is the abbreviation, and it's basically heart disease, and it's related to atherosclerosis. And if you can see that picture there, you see the normal artery. So there's nothing in that artery there, in that artery wall. If you look at the diseased artery, you can see that plaque buildup. So plaque builds up in the artery walls, which causes narrowing of the arteries, and which makes it harder for blood to flow through. So a blood clot may form and stop blood flow, causing a heart attack or a stroke. So a heart attack basically occurs when blood flow to parts of the heart is blocked by a clot. Most people survive their first heart attack, but will need to make changes, and doctors will advise you on medications that might be needed, and a lot of times lifestyle changes that need to be made. So warning signs could be discomfort in the center of the chest that lasts a few minutes or that goes away and comes back. Discomfort in other areas of upper body, arm, back, neck, jaw, stomach. Shortness of breath is a warning sign, and breaking into a cold sweat and nausea can be a warning sign. Stroke. If you're having a stroke, you may have sudden numbness or weakness in the face, arm, or leg, especially on one side of the body. There can be sudden confusion, trouble speaking, or difficulty understanding speech. Sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes, sudden trouble walking, dizziness, loss of balance, or lack of coordination, sudden severe headache with no known cause. So an ischemic stroke, which is the most common one, happens when a blood vessel that feeds the brain gets blocked, usually from a blood clot. When blood supply to the brain is shut off, brain cells will die. So you could see those pictures there just to give you a little example. The result is inability to carry out some of previous functions. It can affect walking, talking. Um, a hemorrhagic stroke occurs when a blood vessel within the brain burst, and that can or is most likely caused by hypertension. So those are some things we'll talk about. How do we prevent some of these things from happening? So you may have seen this before. So if you think somebody may be having a stroke, you want to act fast. So these abbreviations, FAST, and we want to do the following simple test. So the F stands for face. Ask the person to smile. Does one side of the face droop? Arms. Ask the person to raise both arms. Does one arm drift downward? Speech. Ask the person to repeat a simple phrase. Is their speech slurred or strange? Time. So if you observe, oops, sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. Time. If you observe any of these signs, you want to call 911 immediately. So we want to act fast. So that is the abbreviation. So that's one thing to remember. Face, ask them to smile, lift their arms, speech, and then time. You want to act fast. Um, Other types of CVD, so heart failure. And when we say heart failure, it doesn't mean that the heart stops. Sometimes we hear this as referred to as CHF or congestive heart failure. So the heart isn't pumping blood as well as it should. The body's need for blood and oxygen is not met. So that's part of heart failure. Arrhythmias, abnormal rhythm of the heart. So there's different types of arrhythmias. It could be the heart is beating too fast, could be too slow, could be an irregular heartbeat. So bradycardia is when the heart is beating slowly, so less than 60 beats per minute. Tachycardia is when the heart is beating too fast, more than 100 beats per minute. And then there can also be heart valve problems. When the heart valves don't open or close properly, this can allow for blood flow, to not move as it should. Regurgitation, the blood is leaking, bulging, prolapse, mitral valve prolapse. Those are some of the words you may hear when it comes to heart valve problems. So what are some of those risk factors for cardiovascular disease? The statistics speak loud and clear that there's a strong correlation between cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So if we look at some of these causes, as people age, their cardiovascular system becomes weaker. So aging, obviously that is not a risk factor that we can change our age, but that is a risk factor. Same with genetics. People who have direct family members that have had heart disease are at a higher risk of developing themselves. Lifestyle. So we know that lifestyle is something we can change, for the most part. So aspects of everyday life, from work stress to lack of exercise and tension, can increase the risk of heart disease. Our gender. So men are 3 to 5 times more likely to develop heart disease than women. Smoking. So another thing that we can change, if we're a smoker, that puts us at risk. So nicotine and carbon monoxide increases the heart rate, lowers the oxygen level in the heart muscles, and can cause thrombosis. Diabetes, hypertension, and blood glucose can lead to angiosclerosis and damage to the tunic intima. So diabetes is a risk factor. So we're always aiming to keep our diabetes under control, our blood pressure under control, to cut down our risk for cardiovascular disease. Diet. So if we have a diet that's rich in fat, salt, sugar, as well as foods containing alcohol, this can increase our risk and causing high blood pressure as one of the risk factors for that cardiovascular disease. So we know some of these: diet, smoking, our lifestyle. These are some of the things we can work on to help reduce our risk, and that's what we're aiming for. Okay, cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So at least 68% of the people age 65 or older with diabetes die from some form of heart disease, and 16% die from stroke. So that's why this topic is important. We want to get the information out there to prevent this. Adults with diabetes are 4 times more likely to have heart disease or stroke than adults without diabetes. The American Heart Association considers diabetes to be one of the 7 major controllable risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So we know keeping our blood sugars under control, keeping our A1Cs down to acceptable levels is going to help prevent these risk factors. And why are people with diabetes at higher risk? Both Having both hypertension and diabetes is going to double our risk. So we're always looking at both of those things when it comes to heart disease. So people with diabetes are more likely to have these conditions, which increases their risk. So I mentioned high blood pressure, abnormal cholesterol, and high triglycerides. So high LDL is your unhealthy cholesterol. So that bad cholesterol, if that's high, that's a risk factor. Low HDL. So HDL is our healthy cholesterol. That's the one that actually protects our heart. So we want that number to be higher. If our good cholesterol, if that HDL is too low, that's a risk factor. Obesity. So we know being overweight, being obese is a risk factor. When we have obesity, that's associated with insulin resistance, lack of physical activity. So again, this may be something we can work on. Adding more exercise is going to help lower our risk, and increased inflammation. So a lot of these diseases do cause inflammation on our body, and that's a risk factor. So again, a lot of these things, diet and exercise, and we'll talk more about it, they can help lower the risk of these. Okay, so how do we lower that risk? So what we want to do is we want to lower our blood pressure. We want to try to lose weight if we're obese. We want to try to exercise more. We want to manage our diabetes, and we want to quit smoking. So again, a lot of these things, these are that lifestyle change, these adjustments we need to make to lower our risk factors. So if we just touch on those a little bit, blood pressure. So we know that high blood pressure can double our risk of stroke if it's uncontrolled. So it's super, super important. If you have gone to the doctor and they say your blood pressure is high, or they put you on medication, super important that you take that medication every day. Blood pressure is not necessarily something that we feel. If it's super high, people may get a headache or things like that. But if it's just a little high, your body may be used to it. And people get in their head like, oh, I'm feeling good, I don't need my medication. And that cannot be further from the truth, especially with blood pressure. So you want to monitor blood pressure if it's high. Sometimes people will have a monitor at home, or the doctor will prescribe a monitor to have at home to check it. A lot of the local pharmacies will have a blood pressure cuff that you can go and check it. We want to maintain our blood pressure less than 140 over 90. So we know if what we consider normal, our ideal is 120 over 80, but maintaining it 140 or 90 is a number that we look for. So over that is when we want to alert the doctor if we're checking it on our own. Blood pressure will fluctuate. So you may check it at 1 minute and it might be high, and you might check it, a couple minutes later and it may come down. And that's what we're looking for. If we were just running or rushing into an appointment, I'm sure we've all been there. We're in a rush. We get to our appointment. They check our blood pressure. It's high. They tell you to relax and they'll check it again. So just important that if we were ever told we have high blood pressure, it is something we want to kind of monitor regularly to see where we're at. When we talk about diet, the biggest thing when we talk about blood pressure is sodium. So we know that sodium, we need to limit it. When we're watching our blood pressure, if we have high blood pressure, the limit should be about 1,500 milligrams of sodium in a day, which is equivalent to about half a teaspoon of salt. So one thing that we would always try to do is remove that salt shaker, because once we start shaking salt on our foods, it's very hard to keep to that 1,500 milligrams in a day. So many foods have sodium in them already. Obviously, we know like the processed ones that taste salty, chips, luncheon meats, hot dogs, any cured meats, bacon, canned foods are high in sodium, soups are high in sodium. So a lot of those we know that they're high in salt and we know, okay, I need to cut back on those. But you may be surprised, even things like piece of bread has sodium in it, a bagel has sodium in it, so these sodium content can add up. So, one thing, if we're watching our sodium, we're going to need to start looking at food labels. We want to see how much salt is in foods. And you may be pretty surprised, next time you're in the store, if you have a canned food at home, check the sodium on there. Some things like a canned soup can have, over 1,000 milligrams in one serving. And a can could be 2 servings. So you could have, more than your day's worth in one item. So it's important to kind of look at that sodium, look how it adds up, get rid of that salt shaker. Think about herbs, spices, different things you can use. We don't want to say, oh, a food has to taste terrible now that I'm watching my salt. So we want to think, okay, how can I season things? Garlic, onion, pepper, fresh herbs, parsley, basil, oregano, whatever ones you like. There's different blends like Mrs. Dash and, other kind of herb blends that would be good. So those are things to check out. Another really important piece when we're watching our blood pressure and when we're eating healthy in general is we need to consume fruits and vegetables. So 4 to 5 cups, or basically, maybe a couple pieces of fruit in the day and, two cups of vegetables. So think about your diet being colorful. Fruits and vegetables have magnesium, potassium, different minerals and vitamins, and all those kind of help our blood pressure too. So if we can get, maybe a couple of fruits in the day, if we can get, when we're eating, thinking of our food plate where we fill half of our plate with vegetables is a really great idea, because we're getting those in and those are helping our blood pressure. When we talk about exercise, we want to get about 30 minutes of moderate to more intense exercise, at least 5 days a week, or the goal of about 150 minutes per week. And that's ideal for our heart health. I know that might not be, something everyone can do. Some people may have some restrictions. So, as much as you can get moving, that's what you're looking for. Maybe you can't get that 30 minutes at once because that's too much for you. So start with 5-10 minutes at a time. Go for a 10-minute walk. Then later on in the day, maybe you do another 10 minutes. You can build up to that 30 minutes in a day if you're not able to do it all at once. Okay. Chair exercises are something else. If you're not as mobile, or we're not getting out as much with, everything that's been going on, You can do some chair exercises. There's a good program called Sit and Be Fit, which is on the PBS channel, or you can put Sit and Be Fit into your, computer on YouTube, and that will come up. And those are different things you can kind of watch and follow along. And a chair exercise is something you can easily do at home to get yourself moving. We can't say this enough. We want to quit smoking. So we know smoking is not going to help our heart health. So we would want to try to do that. If we need intervention, speak to your doctor. There's also a lot of smoking cessation programs. You can speak to your Cecilia health coach also if you need some resources for that. And as I mentioned before, we always want to take our medication that the doctor prescribed. If our medication is bothering us for any reason, call the doctor, if anything needs to be adjusted, but you want to make sure you're taking that medication to control that blood pressure. Okay, so obesity. Um, I know we mentioned it as a risk factor, so that's a complication linked to, obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, can all go hand in hand, and they can raise our odds of having a stroke. So losing as little as 10 pounds if you're overweight can have a real impact and can help reduce your risk of having a stroke. So, don't think about weight loss in these big, huge numbers. If you look at a BMI chart and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get down this low, where it says the healthy BMI. Think about it in small amounts, so that 10 pounds at a time, or if you want to think about 5 or even or 10% of your weight loss or your total weight to lose weight, little bits at a time to move you towards that healthier weight are all going to be helpful in reducing your risk. So a little bit at a time of weight loss, it can be helpful. So even if we don't get our body mass index all the way down to 25 or less, if you're moving it down, you are helping yourself, and you just slowly, have little goals at a time, um, to get to a healthier weight for you. So not about always being at a perfect weight or what these charts considered perfect, but getting to a healthier weight for you is what we would aim for. So you can always work with a registered dietitian. They can help you achieve your weight loss goals. The website eatright.org. You can put in where you live, and if you're looking for a dietitian, that's a good resource to find someone, and also a really good resource just for general good nutrition information. So check that out when you can. And making exercise a part of your everyday lifestyle is important. So again, it doesn't have to be I'm going for an hour run or half-hour walk. Maybe it's as simple as, walking to the store instead of taking your car, or getting on the train or the subway. Maybe it's if you're driving, parking your car further and walking a little further to the store. Maybe it's taking an extra 5 minutes in the store, and while you're leaning on that grocery cart, walking around a little bit more. So just little bits of exercise, getting yourself moving. If you're finding yourself sitting for a long time, get up and walk around your house, walk around your apartment. Just keeping that body moving is so important. Okay, so blood sugar management. So chronic high blood pressure, I'm sorry, blood sugar management. So chronic high blood sugar damages blood vessels over time, which can make a blood clot more likely to form. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure we're monitoring our blood sugars, and we need to make sure we're keeping those blood sugars within a desirable range. So what we're going to look at is always our diet. So we want to look at our diet to help control our blood sugars. So we know we're following a carbohydrate controlled diet when we have diabetes. So we're not excluding carbohydrates from our diet, but we're making sure we're watching the portions of those. So, again, a real simple way is, we're not going to get into carbs totally in this discussion, But a simple way is using that food plate, filling half of your plate with vegetables, which are low in carbs. So those could be cooked vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, zucchini, eggplant, could be raw salad, tomato, cucumbers, peppers, but a good portion of vegetables, half the plate. Your carbohydrates, so if you're having rice or pasta or potato, that should be the smaller portion, the quarter of your plate, and the other quarter of your plate would be your lean protein. So your diet to help those blood sugars is one that's, monitoring the portions of those carbohydrates, just to speak very general about it. We know exercise can help keep our blood sugars down. So like we mentioned before, keeping yourself active. And then certainly taking your medications as they're prescribed to keep those blood sugars within range. So when we say within range, what we're looking for when we're checking, if you're checking your fasting blood sugars, so first thing in the morning before you eat anything, your blood sugar should be between 80 and 130. And then if we're checking our blood sugars after we eat, ideally we look for 2 hours after. And then the range is a little bit bigger. Blood sugar is going to go up or can go up after we eat. So between 80 and 180 after we eat, 2 hours after. So those are the general ranges. And then an A1C of around 7%. So those numbers are what we look for when we're talking about blood sugars that are under control. Okay, and our smoking, we want to quit smoking. We know that that can accelerate clot formations. As I mentioned before, talk to your doctor. There's aids such as nicotine pills or patches. There's counseling. There's medications. Don't give up. A lot of times, somebody who's been smoking a long time needs several tries, to quit. So just keep trying. If you tried before and you weren't successful, just try it again. Each attempt you make is going to get you closer to being successful at beating that habit. So just keep going with it. All right. So these are some really good resources when we talk about heart disease. So if you, can jot these down, the American Heart Association, www.heart.org is a really good site, which would give you a lot of good information. I particularly like this site a lot for a lot of their handouts. And, if you wanted to go on there and you plug in low sodium, you'll get some different information. Heart disease, there's a lot of good information on diet, recipes, there's a lot of good information. Just to kind of give you an overall things to follow with heart disease. One of the really good resources I like on there, something they talk about a lot is called the Salty Six. So it basically goes over what are the 6 salty foods in the American diet. And like I said, a lot of them we know. So, but the number one is bread and rolls. So again, that may not be something we think of as a salty food, but think about portion size. If someone's eating a sandwich and it's on a larger piece of bread, bagels are big. So, it's the portion that increases also the sodium. We know it increases the calories when things are big, the carbs when that bread is big, but now it's also increasing that salt in those foods. So bread and rolls is number one on our salty six. Pizza, because we know a lot of us eat pizza. It's a quick food. Doesn't mean you can never eat pizza. No, you can have pizza, but we have to think pizza is going to be high in sodium. So what do we have to do? We need to look at those portions. So we definitely don't want to add those salty meats to a pizza. So we wouldn't want to have sausage, pepperoni, those things that would add more salt to that pizza. What we could do is maybe add some veggies. What we can do is instead of having 2 pieces of pizza, maybe we have one and we have a salad with it. A really good way to add in those vegetables we mentioned. And then you can control how much salt you're taking in. Our number three food would be sandwiches. So kind of goes with the bread and then what's on the sandwich. How can we lower that? So maybe we could do like a half a sandwich with a salad. Maybe we can do something that's a vegetarian sandwich. Maybe we do like grilled eggplant and, other vegetables. And that would be a way to kind of cut back on that sodium, because the number four item is going to be cold cuts. So I think we all know that those are high in salt. You can get lower sodium cold cuts. So that's a good choice to cut down on the salt. Doesn't mean that they're low in sodium. So that's another thing to be careful of. If something says lower sodium or reduced sodium, it just means that though it's 25% less than the original product. So for example, ham is very, very high in salt. So even if you choose the low sodium one, yes, it's going to be lower in sodium, but it's still going to have a good amount of sodium in it. So again, what do? We watch our portions. We probably can't and shouldn't eat a sandwich that maybe, is 3 inches thick and has, 10 slices of ham on it. But if we had one or two or three slices of low sodium ham on it, whole wheat bread with some vegetables, that would be a better choice. Our number five item is soup. So we know that soup is going to be high in salts. So canned soups, if you go out to eat, those soups are going to be high. So you just have to be careful. Kind of hard if you're making it, then you can control how much salt is going in it. You can get lower sodium variety of soups. That would be something I would always want to see the label to kind of see how much salt am I getting. And the number six item in our salty six is burritos and tacos. So I think those type of foods and then those type of restaurants are pretty popular, and they're going to be very high in salt, the cheese, the sauces. So something you were getting something like that or making it at home, maybe more like a grilled fajita, grilled chicken or steak with, fresh peppers and a little seasoning would be better than the ones that maybe are like drowning in sauces and cheeses and things like that. So, just to give you an idea. So I hope you had a chance to write some of these other ones down. Of course, the American Diabetes Association, diabetes.org. That's another one I really like. And they also have a food hub with recipes and, kind of planning out menus and things like that. And then, of course, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Those are some other really good websites. So check those out when you can. Okay, so we've come to the end of our webinar. So you can use that question tab on your toolbar. And, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, so some common ones that I'm asked, or one thing I forgot to touch on for a second when we were talking about diet. So I'll touch on some of that now because that's, where I want to go with, what are some ways that you can raise your HDL cholesterol or that good cholesterol? And one thing is including omega-3 fats in your diet. So I forgot to mention when I was talking about things with our diet to help our heart health is including fish in our diet. So, that's a really good way to get those omega-3 fats in. Salmon is a really great source of omega-3s. So our fattier fish, so yes, they have a little more calories, they have higher fat content, but they have this healthier fat in it. So those omega-3s are a good fat that can help raise that good cholesterol. So salmon is probably our most common. Mackerel, tuna, sardines, those are fish that are high in omega-3. So if you like fish and you can include it, including that about twice a week is ideal. Not always easy to do. Other ways we can get omega-3s, plant sources would be flaxseed. So flaxseed, you would just want to always eat it ground. So you would never eat a whole flaxseed because our body cannot digest it that way. So you would do ground flaxseed. So maybe you put it in a smoothie, maybe you sprinkle it on a salad. Maybe you sprinkle it on your oatmeal or your yogurt. Those are good ways to get flaxseed, or chia seeds are another good source of omega-3s. Walnuts are a type of nut that's high in omega-3. So those are definitely good choices when we're talking about how do I get more omega-3s in our diet. Um, Eggs are sometimes controversial. People say, "Oh, eggs have high cholesterol. I can't eat them because I'm watching my heart health, heart healthy diet." But eggs have a lot of really good benefits. So one, you can get eggs that are rich in omega-3. So that's another way to get omega-3s in. Eggs also have, B12. They have vitamin D. They have choline in them. Eating eggs is not going to necessarily raise your cholesterol because they have cholesterol in it. So you can have, American Heart Association says, 2 to 3 eggs per week, depending, everybody's different in what they consume in their diet, but those are certainly okay to eat. So those are some things we wanted to mention with the diet and common questions that come up. Okay, so another is about the different types of fat. So we know saturated fat is our bad fat. So again, when we're talking about cholesterol, we don't only look at cholesterol in the diet. So let's say you go get your blood work and the doctor says you have high cholesterol. So it doesn't mean like, oh my goodness, I have to cut out cholesterol in my diets. Cholesterol is only in animal foods. So any of your meats will have cholesterol, milk, cheese, things that come from an animal. But if we only looked at cholesterol, that really isn't going to help us. We need to also look at our fats in our diet. So our bad fats are saturated fat and trans fat. So those are the ones that can clog our arteries, and those are the ones that can raise our cholesterol. So saturated fat can be in our meats. It can be in whole milk products, so whole cheeses made with whole milk. So we try to choose like lower fat milk products. Maybe we do like a 1% milk. Some people choose to do plant-based milk products. It used to just be soy was an option, but now there's oat milk and there's almond milk and there's rice milk and hemp milk and lots of different plant-based milk. So there's different choices for when you're, trying to watch the fat in your diet. One that's a little more confusing at times for people are trans fats. So trans fats are basically, you want to think of them as man-made fats. So the best way that I used to describe it is, trans fats are created when we're taking a liquid and trying to make it into a solid or semi-solid. So think about like a margarine. So you're taking like a liquid vegetable oil and you're making it into that like semi-soft stick margarine. And that created these trans fats. So trans fats are, just as bad for our body as saturated fats, in the sense that they can clog those arteries also. So trans fats were kind of created and used, and they may be in different kind of like snack foods, crackers, things like that, because they prolong the shelf life of foods. So you want to look for those. You want to look for things, if you're, looking at that food label, low saturated fat, low trans fat is what you're looking for, because those are the two bad fats. The good fats you may see on like monounsaturated fats, like I mentioned, the omega-3s. Those are not always on a food label, but you can see them on certain things. Like if you have a package of nuts, whatever they are, almonds, cashews, walnuts, you're going to see probably see those listed out, because nuts are something that has some of those healthy fats in them. So just to kind of give you an idea, and like I mentioned, that American Heart Association website, you can go to that also and put in the food label, and you may get more information on that too. All right. Any other questions by anyone? Okay, so if anybody has any other questions, feel free to ask your coach if there's anything that you wanted clarified. They can go over anything with you. But thanks so much for joining this evening. And let me just see, we should have our next ones listed here. So you're welcome to join us at our upcoming live events. If you're interested in any of these, let your diabetes coach know. They can send you a schedule. But the ones that are on the schedule so far are October 19th, also at 6 p.m. And that's Diabetes 101, Mastering the Essentials. And then we have November 8th. That one's a little bit earlier, 5 p.m. And that one will be getting everyone ready for the holidays, embracing the holidays without deprivation, healthy eating strategies for a festive eater. So that sounds like a good one. So check that out. Okay. So if you need more support, want to attend more events, ask your coach, reply to one of the emails. They'll share everything with you. You want to text if you haven't signed up for text messages, ask your coach about that. I promise we don't send you a ton of texts, but you can get some really good reminders, or it's quick and easy way to communicate. They can send you the live event schedule. If you're on Facebook, we have a Facebook page, our Cecilia Health personalized diabetes coaching. So if you go on Facebook, if you put in Cecilia Health, it'll come up. We have really great blogs that have, different information, quick tips and things that are really good to read over. So check that out if you can. Okay, and so thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance and participation, and I hope you can join us at our future events. Okay, have a good night, everyone.